So it's finally time to discuss everything that I saw during the episode 41 to 43 pre-screening of the 1000 Year Blood War arc. I've watched the first 3 episodes of Cour 4 3 separate times in a single afternoon, and I've had plenty of time to think over all of the material. So within this video, we're going to be covering every fight, all of the anime original scenes, including new lore dumps, and yes, a couple of things that genuinely got under my skin, because there's some of that too within the first 3 episodes of Cour 4. So yeah, this is your final warning. If you haven't seen episodes 41 to 43 in the cinema yet, close the tab now because we're going to be diving into the full spoilers. But you know who already does know the spoilers for these first 3 episodes? These are the individuals who subscribe to the channel. Episode 41 begins with a Yhwach dream sequence. He's asleep and he's dreaming about one outcome, which ends with Ichigo cleanly cutting him in half. The beginning of the episode also has this amazing wide CG sweep across the entire Urahara battlefield. Every fight is going on at the same time as you can clock Urahara's group, the aftermath up on the higher floors, Uryu squaring off against Haschwalth, Gerard's section which is building up, and rather than cutting between sealed off rooms, the camera glides across all of the battlefield like it's a genuine warfront. It does a lot for the scale of the final battle during the 1000 Year Blood War arc. Chad and Ganju also get a expanded scene which pads out their scrap against the giant statues. Ganju turns these stone golems to sand, the usual back and forth about clearing a path so Ichigo can push ahead, as Chad does exactly what he does on the page and nothing more really. And both of them then vanish for the remainder of the episodes that were shown. A massive highlight during this screening was Uryu versus Haschwalth. They've actually torn down everything that exists within the manga and they've rebuilt this battle from the ground up. Nothing in this fight is a straight lift-off from the manga, and you feel that within seconds of the fight. Uryu drops the Volstandig almost immediately, and he starts throwing these sprawling bullet hell lattices of arrows and lasers across the room. Haschwalth reads all of this with the Almighty as he's sliding through the gaps, and the anime does something pretty clever with it as it makes Uryu's shots look like they're missing, skidding off the walls and ceiling at angles that shouldn't work, until you realize Haschwalth has simply saw every arrow before it leaves Uryu's bow. At one point, Haschwalth offers a bit of praise for the fight that Uryu is putting up, and Uryu bats it straight back, completely uninterested in being complimented by the man that he's trying to destroy. The fight then escalates as Haschwalth undergoes an all-new, never-before-seen transformation, as he dons a new cloak-like form which is built upon the power of the Soul King that he is sharing with Yhwach, something that reads almost like a Volstandig of his very own. Uryu vs Haschwalth is stitched together with Ichigo and Orihime confronting Yhwach. Both of these fights cross-cut between each other constantly, to the point where Uryu and Ichigo are practically finishing each other's sentences from 2 different rooms. Uryu leans on his faith in Ichigo in order to answer back to Haschwalth, and he calls exactly how Ichigo will respond to Yhwach. It's a great moment of interwoven dialogue between 2 rival characters. Episode 43 leaves with Haschwalth still wielding the Almighty. He hasn't really used the balance yet, and there's no antithesis from Uryu. The entire confrontation deliberately is left hanging, as there are plenty of threads left open for the remaining 10 episodes of Cour 4. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to see a finale to Uryu vs Haschwalth that is totally different to what was shown within the manga. This then brings us to Yoruichi and Urahara versus Askin. Yoruichi's been poisoned with a hybrid gift ball and Askin is already calling her finished. Urahara turns up, jams an immunizing drug into her body and buys roughly 5 minutes of time. She point blank refuses to use a certain transformation of hers. She then eats a solid punch from Askin that drops her flat as Urahara forces her to transform anyway, as we are finally treated to Yoruichi's God of Thunder transformation. The anime adapts this uncensored and in full detail. Her Reiatsu shifts 48 times a second, and the anime actually bothers to visualize why that breaks Askin. Every blow lands on a slightly different spiritual pressure, so any immunity he builds to one version is dead weight against the next. The form's animated beautifully, the tonal swerve into comedy also works really well during this portion of the fight. There's also a wedgie gang thrown in, and a scene between Yoruichi and Urahara where he uses Yoru Nip. So yeah, all of these comedic beats land really well during the Yoruichi vs Askin battle portion. Episode 41 wraps up with Askin revealing Hashian, his Volstandig which is drenched in purple. During this, we get a new OST track. It's a classical, almost Egyptian-styled piece with choir vocals playing over it. Askin's stats spike as the rings on the floor crank his movement speed and he floods the space with poison. Urahara responds by activating his Bankai Kanonbiraki Benihime Aratame. And honestly, there's a moment of silence where Urahara says Bankai and the scene is goosebump inducing. The entire staging for this Bankai is set on a pure horror movie vibe. The activation is a shot from a first person perspective as Benihime rattles behind this curtain, slowly crawling out from it, and it's a perfect blend of 2D and CG animation. The anime shows us Urahara riding on the stitches of Benihime like rails to close the distance between him and Askin. With Urahara having the power to remake anything that he touches, it allows him to rebuild his own eyes, which Askin destroyed earlier in the fight. The fight ends exactly like how it does within the manga, with Grimmjow delivering the finishing blow after he ambushes Askin and tears his heart clean out. We learn that Grimmjow develops immunity to the poison thanks to his Resurrection Pantera, which alters his Aranka Reiatsu to fully Hollow Reiatsu. Before Urahara collapses, he calls out to Ichigo and Rukia by name, apologizing that he is leaving the rest up to them. There is a ton of exposition during this battle, which some of you may or may not like, but a lot of the dialogue is sourced directly from the manga. So there's only so much that Pierrot Films can do to cut and change around this dialogue, especially if it's critically important for the plot beats that are unfolding. While it's a great fight, it's not one of the faster paced battles, as it does tend to stay on screen for quite a while. Towards the end of the fight, we also get an anime exclusive scene of Neliel. These details were only revealed in Can't For Your Own World, that Yushiro, Yoruichi, Grimmjow and Urahara were saved by Neliel, so it's great to see this inclusion here. Now, while a lot of us were excited for the Visoreds to finally get some new scenes during their battle against Gerard, it's safe to say that I think in the anime they were still robbed of their moment. We open on all of them in a formation which is taken from the very end of Cour 3. When we come back to the fight, it seems like a lot has happened off screen as they are scattered behind buildings while Gerard is hunting them down. We then get a rapid fire sequence of Shinji flipping the world with his Sakanade ability and stabbing Gerard in the nape as Hiyori's Sero, Kensei goes Bankai with his mask on, Mashido and Kensei rush in together, Lisa, Love and Rose with masks and Shikai active, and Hachi using his Kido. They take a full Power Ranger pose with these different colored Sero combining, and Gerard just no-sells their attack, and he ends them all off with a single clothesline which scatters them into the battlefield. The whole battle sequence with the Visoreds and Gerard runs for about a minute. Then Kinpachi tags into the fight as he states the captain classes have all been wiped out, as Byakuya and Hitsugaya also join the fold. The height jabs between Byakuya and Hitsugaya are retained within the anime, and surprisingly Gerard isn't rendered in CG, which is so reassuring. We see Hoffnung's damage reflection trick appear, as in the manga it's only really Kinpachi who eats any backlash from chips appearing on Hoffnung, but in the anime Byakuya and Hitsugaya also are striked vertically across the torso. The final episode of the screening, episode 43, ends with one more of Hitsugaya's flower petals disintegrating, as this hints at his adult transformation probably appearing in episode 44. Now we then move on to Ichigo and Orihime's confrontation with Yhwach. Ichigo's true Shikai goes up against the Soul King absorbed Yhwach, and there is a considerable amount of anime exclusive content which pads out the manga. Yhwach barely stands for half of it. He fights from his seat as he throws waves of Soul King energy and these black ghoul-like shuriken, grinding the pair of Ichigo and Orihime down under his Reiatsu. The crucial change happens here that the anime makes it plain that Ichigo has a plan and isn't simply charging in blind. But then he gets overwhelmed by Yhwach and knocked flat and stays down long enough that Orihime has to hold the line by herself. The anime's been quietly building up to this moment. In episode 42, it opens as it drops us into a soft flashback where we see Orihime speaking to Tatsuki, as Orihime describes Ichigo to be like this specific type of flower. So when both Orihime and Ichigo are being Reiatsu crushed from Yhwach, Orihime catches it on Santen Keshun and holds it up on the diagonal hard shield as she builds footholds for Ichigo to push off as she heals him and gets battered to the ground and stands straight back back up, she throws a counter with Tsubaki, and when Ichigo's out cold, she squares up to Yhwach alone for a solid 2 minutes, even firing a reflective Shiten Koshun at him, and it doesn't really dent him, but it lands and Yhwach is visibly impressed by her. She clearly says, "I will protect him, I reject." And all of this builds upon her narrative arc, where she wanted to stand beside Ichigo, but she couldn't in the past, but now she is fighting alongside him for the very first time. During this fight, there's also a lot of lore revealed from Yhwach. He reveals to Ichigo that Ichibei took him in, ran him through Irazusando, and tested him out, as he outright tells Ichigo Ichibei's plan was to install Ichigo as the next Soul King, which is pretty much a death sentence. Ichigo responds by saying, "Soul King or not, who cares, because if he doesn't put Yhwach down, then there's nothing left worth protecting." Yhwach also reveals details about black as chaos, that the colorless black is the Soul King's own power, and Ichibei is the one who commands all black, with Yhwach framing himself as having become the world, so that killing him means ending the existence of the Soul King, the world of the living, and Hueco Mundo. Ichigo answers by saying if protecting everyone means cutting the world off, then fine. Yhwach goes on to mock the death of Masaki, as Ichigo launches a furious Getsuga which nearly cuts Yhwach half on the spot. Due to this spike of rage, Ichigo gets flung around as Orihime moves to stop him, diving back into the fight, but she reads that Ichigo isn't actually panicking and fighting blindly as she lets him go. Ichigo's blades then turn white as the Horn of Salvation ignites in a towering column of red flame. We then cut away from the fight as we never really get to see Ichigo swing around the Horn of Salvation form. When Yhwach reveals details about Ichibei's intentions, we also get an anime exclusive scene with Ichibei. Ichibei's at the Squad Zero shrine. The Blood Oath seals are sitting blank now that their owners are apparently dead. Ichibei draws a salamander in ink that crawls to life and starts coiling around him. We see flashbacks of when Ichibei first met Ichigo and had told him to come to the Soul King's palace. How Ichigo was tested in Irazusando. How he was given the memories of the Soul King. How a piece of Ichigo's power helped to restore Ichibei. The salamander pours itself into Ichibei's sake bowl as he drinks it down and mutters, "I'm sorry." It seems like something is created, as then he turns and looks dead into the camera, and I have no idea what they are setting up involving Ichibei with these new scenes. But it's amazing to be learning all of these new lore details which appear to be coming straight from the Can't Fear Unworld light novels. After the credits, there's a interview between Kubo, Taguchi, and Murata. I'm not sure whether if we're going to be getting this interview released at some point when Call 4 officially releases, but some very important details were revealed during this exchange. What comes through straight away is how much of this anime adaptation runs directly through Kubo, as Taguchi and Murata are open about how daunting it is to sit across from the author who built all of this, but they are quick to add that he made it all feel effortless. Kubo turns up to every single voice recording session, and at one point he flips the praise back onto Taguchi, calling him a genuinely strong director, and he admits that he wishes he could be in the booth for every recording, even when his own workload keeps him away. They also talk about the anime original material within episodes 41 to 43 as they walk through some specific additions, including a transformation that exists nowhere in the manga. This of course is the transformation of Haschwalth. This is something that Kubo had personally storyboarded and designed. They also talk about additions that were made to flesh out Urahara's Bankai activation within the anime, like how Kubo storyboarded the entire sequence of Benihime appearing in its Bankai form by crawling out from behind a curtain in a horror movie-like aesthetic. Kubo, Taguchi, and Murata all mention that the anime is new Bleach. It's not a direct translation of the manga. It's a version that only exists on the screen. Kubo admits that himself and the anime staff have poured everything into this anime adaptation. They state that this is the final stretch of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, as they tell fans to look forward to Core 4 when it releases. The entire point of Core 4 is to circle back on the manga content and expand upon everything that was rushed during the end of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Orihime gets her much needed expansion, as her role is truly incredible within the anime. Uryu's handful of panels against Haschwalth have been expanded upon a great deal. Haschwalth gets an all-new transformation. Even the brief inclusion of those anime exclusive Visoreds scenes were much needed. And as for the content that's adapted faithfully, like the scenes between Urahara and Yoruichi versus Askin, were done masterfully. Now unfortunately, there's no content like a Urahara and Yoruichi backstory that's woven into the Askin fight, as I did theorize in earlier videos on the channel that we may get a Urahara backstory during this fight in the anime. But still, it's cool to see that Neliel had saved Yoruichi, Urahara, Yushiro and Grimmjow, as we didn't really know anything about their fate with the way that the manga had panned out with its rushed pacing. As I did in my non-spoiler review, my favourite moment was Orihime standing up to Yhwach. But yeah, we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about the full spoilers for episodes 41 to 43? Rest assured that I will be doing a complete review and manga versus anime breakdown for each of these episodes when they officially release on streaming platforms. So do subscribe to the channel and stick around for that, as those episode reviews and breakdowns will begin from the 25th of July. If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about these first 3 episodes of Cour 4, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Bleach video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.